The second Adeptus Custodes character has joined Tacticus, as Aesoth, the Vexillus Praetor, becomes the 93rd character overall to join the game. Today we'll see just how good they really are after they failed to shine in the recent survival event. The second Adeptus Custodes character is joining Tacticus, as Aesoth becomes the next golden banana to join the game. This shield bearer really looks the part, as if he's already in a lineup ready for war, and I can easily imagine facing a company of them across the battlefield. In lore, deep within the halls of the Imperial Palace, few warriors inspire more awe than the Vexillus Praetors. These towering golden sentinels are the standard bearers of the Emperor's own will, wielding not only the finest weapons of war, but the very symbols of the Imperium's divine might. Each Vexillus Praetor bears a Vexilla, a relic standard of immense power, embedded with arcane tech, sacred sigils, and psychic harmonics from a time before records. This isn't just a battlefield decoration, it's a beacon of supremacy, flooding allies with inspiration, fortitude, and sometimes even protective energies that twist the tide of battle. And each has a different flavour of usefulness. The Vexilla Defensor is for defensive fortitude. The Vexilia Imperius aids in offence, but the one that Aesoth carries, as we'll discover later, is the Vexilla Magnifica, which helps to obscure forces from enemy fire. And though they bear a towering standard, they are no less skilled than any other custodian, armed with guardian spears or sentinel blades, and trained in every martial form. Not just any custodian becomes a praetor. This honour is reserved for those that have fought in the most critical wars, whose discipline and presence alone elevate legions. And yet, for all their glory, they are not boastful. They do not bellow orders or crave praise. They simply exist as living reminders that the Emperor is still watching. And with that introduction, I'm excited to see if Aesoth can live up to that high praise. As always in this series, we're going to take a look at 3 different things. How long it roughly takes him to level up to Diamond 3 when compared to other characters, his traits and general usefulness, and how good he is in legendary events. I'm not going to be looking too much into his usefulness in guild raids or tournaments, as I'm going to leave that to our other wonderful content creators. So let's dive right in. Aesoth is unlocked in the usual character release event. This one is an Auric Champions event, and it starts on Sunday, June the 15th, so you're going to be able to get Aesoth very soon. It sees you collecting Praetorian points by completing missions, which are then converted into Gifts of Terran Artifice. These allow you to open Auramite chests, which have Auramite champion shards and other goodies within them. These shards can then be used to unlock and level up Aesoth. You can see the missions on screen now. If you need help with these missions and getting the best possible start, then definitely check out my beginner's guide to character events, which is linked in the description below. Basically, if you play through the tournament arena and spend 110 blackstone per day, we will definitely be able to pick up each character at Epic 1 level without the need to purchase any additional packs. And as a nice little bonus for this month, we have a special code, DBP Aesoth, and this is going to open 5 Celestine shards and 50 energy to help you get through this event. It doesn't stop here though, because we have some incredible goals to reach this year. With every 1,000 subscribers, another new code will be added, and we are well on our way to 7k viewers. So hit that subscribe button, get your guildmates to do the same, and keep an eye out for my weekly videos. And in the meantime, if you want to earn some free blackstone to help you on your way, you can use my Refer a Friend code in-game today to get 100 free blackstone. Just note that you can only use one person's Refer a Friend code, so make sure you make the most of it. Let's start by looking at roughly how long it takes characters to level from Stone 1 to Diamond 3. The reason I say roughly is because my sheets don't take into account all the extra ways you can get free energy, like in the tournament arena, items gifted to you from your guildmates or from the daily shop. It also doesn't take into account any hard to get items that haven't been added to a lot of places yet. But even with all that in mind, it's always interesting to see how they compare to other characters. What about Aesoth? Where does he fit in? Well, he comes in 63rd place, taking around 38 days to go from Stone 1 to Diamond 3, and is just a bit higher than Trajan in 75th position. I'm quite surprised that he's actually more difficult than the legendary champion of the Custodes, and honestly, I haven't really worked out the pattern that the developers are going for here generally. If we take a look at the graph, then we can see him over on the right hand side, and so he's still quite respectable to level. It takes Aesoth 3 days to go from Stone 1 to Bronze 1, another 2 days from Bronze 1 to Silver 1, 5 days to Gold 1, 13 days to Diamond 1, and then 15 days to Diamond 3, which of course adds back up to the total 38 days. But let's see if it's worth us investing our time in Aesoth. Let's start with his traits. Aesoth is an Imperial character. He has a physical one-hit melee attack with a 1% pierce ratio, and he has no ranged attack. He has the Custodes special trait, Martial Kata, which sees him reduce normal attacks against him by 20%. It also allows him to deal double damage with all his attacks against summons. That's already a really great trait for the Custodes, although Aesoth is really leaning into the defensive side of it rather than the damaging side for sure. Alongside that, he has the Big Target trait, which helps him cover allies around him. He reduces their damage by 1 hit from ranged attacks to a minimum of 1 hit. It also means Aesoth doesn't get any bonuses from tall grass or trenches, but he can't be displaced by someone like Tank Smasher charging him. Finally, he has Resilient, which means that once he's about to be killed, he will be reduced to 1 health instead, but only if he hasn't been overkilled. Next, we'll look at the character's melee damage, range damage, and defense. We do this by leveling the character up to be Winged Diamond 3 with level 30 skills and no weapons or equipment. This is just to equalize the playing field. Then, Castellan Creed, the character with the most average armor and traits in the game, becomes a punching bag for them to test their damage. And finally, Creed will punch them back to see their defensive skills. This is all then ranked against everyone else in the game, so let's see how they do today. Creed, are you ready for today's test?
Well, if it isn't the Emperor's favorite lamppost. Hello, Aesoth. Tell me, does that banner shoot lasers too, or just blind the enemy with righteous smugness?
Creed?
Alright, let's get on with it.
Let's get on with it indeed. Tarvak's melee attack does 3,547 damage, and he takes 1,580 damage from Creed. And well, that's a lot more than I expected to see coming from a person who deals 1 hit, 1% physical damage. That's a hell of a punch that really smacks him into being the 15th most damaging melee champ in the game. I really am blown away by that damage. So alongside him being tough to take down, it is someone that you do not want to go toe-to-toe with. And another reason for that is just his defensive capabilities. With one of the highest armor ratings in the game, and his health pool isn't bad either, which does mean that it's going to take a lot of time to chunk through him, especially if you're facing characters with low piercing weaponry. He comes in 18th place, and this is just behind all those Mark 10 Gravis or Terminator armor champions. The other great thing for his survivability is of course his resilience, so his damage and defense are not bad. For his skills, his passive is Stand Vigil, which is in the buffing category of skills, and this is a really solid skill that gives friendly surrounding units extra damage for any attacks that are not normal attacks. So that means anything that uses an active ability. It also increases their armor rating slightly to make them even more solid, although it's marginal increase in truth. It generally only works for characters directly around Aesoth, but if another Adeptus Custodes character uses their active, then it will affect all allies within 2 hexes for 1 round. This works pretty well with Karayan, who I will review fully later this month, as he can reuse his active every 2 rounds. Should this be prioritized as a skill over others for new players? I don't think so, unless you really want to be prioritizing the buffing of characters. His active is Vexilla Magnifica, and this is in the damage category of skills. Well, I say damage, but it's kind of a defensive support / damage skill, and what it does is allow Aesoth to hit 2 adjacent enemies with a physical damage attack. But the real use for this skill is, as I said earlier, to obscure forces from enemy fire, and it does this by stunning 2 targets attacked for 1 round, and during this time, Aesoth takes a lot less damage. The good thing about this is that it can be used multiple times in battle, but as a cooldown of 2 rounds. Should this be prioritized as a skill over others for new players? No, this is definitely a skill only if you're prioritizing the Custodes or Aesoth as a defensive character. So what do I think overall about their traits and skills? Well, apart from anything else, he shocked me with his melee attack. Like I said, I did not expect that, and this character is seriously tanky. So he's definitely going to be someone that's appearing in the defensive modes like legendary events. If you stick him in a battle ball with a healer, then every couple of rounds he's barely going to be taking any damage, also while he's going to be stunning enemies, and then he can be healed up. With his resilient, it makes him even more tough to take down. And it's really strange because while we were playing with him in survival, we never really got to see him shine in truth. That survival mode definitely downplayed Aesoth's skills, and I just never really got a good feel with him. So I think we need to play with him a lot more and not just value him based on how he was in the survival mode. In terms of the modes he fits into, like I said, I can't wait to see how many battles he fits into with legendary events, because he will absolutely be a champion that I will praise, just like Tyrant Guard. Although his increased armor of allies around him isn't as useful as the flat damage percentage reduction that the Tyranid has. For guild raids, tanks aren't useful, but maybe in a full-on Custodes team he's going to be able to have some fun. And I've said this a lot recently, but we have too much of a focus on the meta teams that the top level teams are using, and not enough focus on putting together teams that are coherent and leveled highly. And I can give you a great example of what this means. One of my guildmates is using D3 orcs, and he is easily holding himself in the top scoring teams in our top 100 guild. And more to the point, he's thoroughly enjoying the experience. For Tournament Arena, I think damage and utility overpowers defensiveness. Otherwise, we would see Tyrant Guard popping up more often. So I would say that he's not going to be much use there. For the rest, if you need a tank, and especially an Imperial one, he's going to be worth a look. So who does he work well with? Well, obviously the Custodes are being designed with a much more rounded experience than the early factions have been, so I completely expect him to be fitting in here rather beautifully. I've already mentioned his synergy with Carrion today, but also Trajan's passive could be triggered every turn if you alternate between Carrion and Aesoth. I know this is heretical chat, but I can't get the image of the Lord of the Rings High Elves defending Helm's Deep out of my head with their absolute precision and alternating martial prowess. It's beautiful. Outside of his own faction, I really like to see him in a team that does multiple active attacks. So let's throw in Baraquel and Ahriman. With Baraquel, I always love him to pair up with Sarquel for some serious damage, and then with Ahriman, I would actually pair that ball of dust up with Vindicta. So the attack pattern would see Aesoth charging in, stunning 2 enemies, and then Vindicta laying down suppressive fire twice with her active. Once the battlefield is on fire, Ahriman can come in and do a lot of damage with his active, and finally if anything's left, then Sarquel and Baraquel can lay down the range damage. That's a lot of utility and suppression and damage in one go, and I think I might try it out in the next tournament area once I've unlocked Aesoth. It definitely sounds like a lot of fun for sure. So overall, I went into this review thinking it would be a bit of a stinker, especially after his poor performance being showcased in the survival event. But after spending a little bit more time getting to know this golden rod, I'm surprisingly excited to test him out. I think the real test for him getting into my team though will be his legendary event performance, because I already have Marneus, Calgar, Tyrant Guard and Revas as my top 3 tanks who I love to play. Let's go and check that now. And we'll start with the Mephiston event. This is going to be the next legendary event we actually play on 6th of July, and it's going to be the very last time you can play this event before he joins the requisition boxes. So let's see how Aesoth does in it. In the Alpha track, it's no Imperials allowed, so he doesn't get to play. In the Beta track, he appears in the physical battle, and then in the Gamma track, he appears in the no mechanical and max 2 hits battles, and this gives him an overall score of 210 in the first event. The average is 234 for all characters, so he's slightly under average here. Moving to the Pattermine event, in the Alpha track, he appears in the physical, melee, and max 4 hits battles. In the Beta track, Imperials are not allowed again, so he doesn't get to play. And then in the Gamma track, he appears in the no Overwatch and no Final Vengeance battles. And this gives him a score of 260 points. With the average being 277 points, he's just slightly below average again. Moving to the Dante event, in the Alpha track, he appears in the max 1 hits and physical damage battles. In the Beta track, he appears in the no power damage and max 3 hits battles. And in the Gamma track, he doesn't get to play because Imperials are not allowed. And so for the Dante event, he finishes on 250 points, and that's above the average of 196 points for this event. Finally, for the Trajan event, in the Alpha track, he appears in the physical damage battle. In the Beta track, Imperials are not allowed, and so he doesn't get to score any points. And then finally in the Gamma track, he appears in the resilient and no bolter damage battles. And so for the Trajan event, he scores 230 points, which is again above the average score of 194 points. And so generally, pretty middle range for every single event so far. And overall, that actually brings him in at 41st position. And you might be thinking, well, that's not great. And when you compare him to the number 1 legendary events points gathering champion at the game currently, Tyrant Guard, then no, it's not. But if you actually look at the Imperial tanks in isolation, then he's one of the best of the bunch. So not completely useless, but not the hero we need yet either. But let's see how this changes as we move forwards. And there were some patch note changes that we need to check as well. Firstly, we saw that Harkin gained the Terrifying trait, and this meant that he could have been added to the alpha track for the recent Trajan legendary event, but alas, it's not for Chaos, so he can't join in the fun there. The other change in the recent patch saw Mephiston gaining the Rapid Assault trait, and this does allow him to join the Dante legendary event in the alpha track. It doesn't make a huge difference to him overall for the legendary events, he's worse than Aesoth for example, but it does make him one of the better champions for the Dante event specifically. And I'm looking forwards to seeing the Mephiston event and eventually the Patermine event leaving us, because this is only going to leave the 2 newer events, Dante and Trajan, where we've seen a real change in style from the developers because they're making them harder than everything else we've seen so far. I'm curious to see what that does to the overall rankings board, and maybe I'll do a sneak peek on that in an upcoming video. So what do you think of Aesoth? Will you be allowing this Vixilis Praetor to stride into view, banner flaring with radiant energy, or is he going to be left with your other Stone 1 characters in your pile of shame? You can check him out right now in the latest version of the Google Planner Sheets linked below.